Hi, this is Richard Rogers. Thank you to those who have been following me these past few months, especially my videos on election polling, my idiosyncratic updates on post-election challenges, and my comments on the Sunday lectionary readings. Obviously, I've put some time into trying to understand the events of late, both as a matter of professional research and also of faith-based reflection. While I try to keep the research and reflection separate, sometimes it is hard. This video merges these two strands. In less than 24 hours, we are going to witness one of the largest failures of prophecy in American history, far exceeding anything we have seen in the past, such as the great disappointment of the Millerites in 1844. Followers of Q will realize, if they have not already, that there is no plan. A segment of Christians will be forced to cope with pastors and prophets who claim that God revealed to them that Donald Trump would have a second term. Some of these religious leaders insisting, even at this late date, that a miracle will occur by noon tomorrow. I am admittedly a bit snarky and mocking about these prophecies. I am especially critical about the leaders. I realize that their followers are listening to what they think are trusted sources. Many of us look at a small number of sources for news and interpretations of events, and the followers of Q and the religious prophets are no different. Most people, whether or not one is a conspiracy theorist, do not have the luxury of time to check multiple sources and to work through the accuracy of completing claims. My biggest concern here are the leaders, the sources that should be trustworthy. In my opinion, what we have heard from these leaders are not gaffes, misstatements, or mistakes. There has been plenty of time to fact check the existence of satanic cabals and election fraud. And those leading these movements should be held accountable, whether they repeated their bogus claims intentionally or out of willful neglect or political expediency. I know that not everyone agrees with me on this point. We are all trying to balance witness by example with speaking the truth. Some want to be more conciliatory, but I think those who are leaders should be held to a higher standard. And where there has been deliberate malfeasance on the part of these leaders, we need to speak loudly and boldly. Long-term political victories in a democratic society, whatever the position, are achieved through persuasion and not by telling lies about election results and seeking to overturn voter preferences by fiat. A righteous nation cannot be built on deceit, but only by righteous people engaging in righteous acts. I feel that it is especially important for me to speak because I've studied and written about apocalypticism and teach about conspiracy theories and domestic terrorism, the very stuff with which we deal now. However, I share with those who disagree with me a concern about the masses of people who put their trust in these deceitful leaders. I understand why some are drawn to these movements. The scripture teaches us that there are spiritual struggles, battles between light and darkness that permeate secular realms. If we go looking for evil, it is easy to find it embedded in the routine operation of modern society and lurking in every corner of the room. After all, we are all sinners. So the evil against which we crusade is as close as you and me. I also have libertarian leanings. Big government and left-wing attacks on free speech and free association bother me to no end. But it is hard for me to believe that making Amazon pay federal taxes, guaranteeing that every person has decent health care, eliminating abuses of power directed at vulnerable minority populations, or wearing a face mask during the biggest global public health crisis in a century are signs that we are sprinting towards socialist totalitarianism. What will happen next? What will happen tomorrow when millions of people face the reality that there is no plan and their prophets spoke in error? It is hard to tell, but we learn from previous failed prophecies that there could be many different responses, all at the same time. Some will realize that they have been duped. In fact, the clock is ticking, and many are already figuring this out. Others will try to move forward, reconstructing the history of the past few months to minimize their acceptance of errant beliefs. However, there will be those who cling to mutations of their disproven conspiracies. There will certainly be some doubling down through reinterpretation or retrenchment. The reinterpretation of predictions is already happening. Numbers and Q drops are not about dates, but references to administrative procedures. Self-proclaimed prophets assert that God told them that Trump will remain the true president in God's eyes after January 20. From this point of view, the January 20 deadline is a mere human construct. God will bring down Biden and the socialist on God's timetable and then restore Trump, the chosen one, to his rightful place. What will we see because of these reinterpretations? Going forward, every problem that the Biden administration has, regardless how normal or how trivial to the political process, will be treated by these people as a sign of God's impending judgment on Biden and the Democrats. Those who retrench will cling to their fringe social networks to reinforce their reinterpretation of prophecy, or they will gravitate to new theories about the New World Order, like the Great Reset. The reinterpreters and retrenchers will remain in their dysfunctional, deceived state, but for some, things could get more serious. We are already hearing about people who justified the violence on January 6th with statements like, "What are we supposed to do if no one believes our story?" They have convinced themselves that everyone who looked at election issues, including Republican state administrators in Georgia and Arizona, state and federal courts, and the U.S. Department of Justice are wrong. They're having a hard time believing that the numbers about election fraud are fake, understanding that interpretations of videos are made up or at times the video itself is edited or altered, accepting the legitimacy of recounts and audits, or recognizing that some of the alleged problems with voting machines are mechanically impossible. Some of these folks may turn to violence, as we saw on January 6. Others will form an underground resistance, continuing the kind of acts we have seen from white supremacists over the past few years. Moreover, the stress of the pandemic and the election has triggered a mental health crisis, and so still others may claim that suicide is a better option than living in a country with Joe Biden as president. I expect a whole bunch of people will simply suffer in silence, stricken by loneliness and depression. As part of my own travels across the internet, I have watched videos and visited chat boards where people discuss these things openly. All of the above options are surfacing. At this time, from a vantage point before the final disconfirmation, it is hard to tell right now how many people are venting and how many will act on their statements. The masses of followers who have been swayed by these beliefs need our help. We need to pray for their enlightenment, their safety, and their avoidance of self-harm. Some have family and friends who will eagerly aid their reintegration into society. However, the events of recent months have fractured many families and destroyed friendships. Jobs have been lost and savings depleted. For individuals in these situations, the usual human and material support mechanisms that assist during times of crisis are not in place. I fall into the category of those who believe that prayer matters in ways that we do not understand. And with the conspiracies of the moment, prayer may be the only tool we have to aid some of these folks with their reintegration into society. Pray like our country depends on it, because it does. Thank you for listening.